Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Velero community meeting / open discussion. Today is September 21st, 2021. We got some status updates that we'll dig into and then discussion topics. First up, we got Dave.
Yeah, so just basically working on the 1.7 release, some more work on upload progress. I'm trying to get back to it anyway. The Beijing team is out Monday, Tuesday, so they'll be back this evening. So yeah, as far as I know, there have been no release blockers found for 1.7, so we're going to go ahead and move towards the RC2 release just to get in some minor fixes, and we'll run through another round of the automated testing, and we should be good.
Awesome. Any questions, comments for Dave? All right, Bridget.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I don't really have a huge amount to report other than what Dave just mentioned. Yeah, I've been doing some manual testing on GCP, and yeah, like we said, everything seems to be progressing well and looking good there. And then also just spending some time looking at some of our internal build processes as well, which may ultimately affect some work going upstream. We're looking at different image registries, and there's a chance that that might end up affecting where we push the open source images to. So I think we discussed that before. We haven't made any decisions yet, but those discussions are in the works. So there might be some changes there. That's it from me.
Nice. Any questions, comments for Bridget? Right. We do have some discussion topics. I don't see Eleanor on here right now. I've already pinged her, so we'll see if she shows up. Otherwise, I'll defer to this one for next time.
Hey, Bridget. The versioning, the plugin versioning design have been merged yet?
No, it hasn't. It has been merged yet. I think we've been focusing. We've kind of frozen main at the minute, so we're only merging in things which are release blockers. I think all the comments have been addressed there. I'll take another look, and then I'll ping folks to look at it again and try and get that merged as soon as we do the GA 4.1.7.
Okay, just curious. I think we were starting from this week. I'm gonna sit back and working on the implementation. So you already create a branch for it, right?
Yes, yeah. There's a branch on the upstream repo, so I think you can make changes against that, and we can merge them in there.
Yeah, let's sync up offline.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions, comments for Bridget? All right, so for discussion topics, since I know, Rafael, that this topic usually brings up a lot of discussion, I'm gonna let Scott go first with his discussion topic, and then we'll dive into yours.
Sure. So the linked issue is one that was closed a few months ago with the comment saying we don't think we can fix it. Reason it came up again is saw a comment on it, and actually someone apparently using I'm not sure if they're using Conveyor or the O80p side, but we got an issue posted on our side as well, suggesting that and basically the issue seems to be when you're running a pod that says run as non-root, the way Kubernetes seems to handle that is that if you specify a container that uses a name but no UID, it doesn't allow it, it complains. But if your container has a UID, then as long as it's not 0, you're good. So the issue is that restic restore fails anytime you're using your pod has run as non-root true. And I guess the question was, is simply switching that to use a UID, instead of using non-root, which is I guess what we're using now with the change to distro list. We were using nobody before, but either way, if we were to use the number rather than the name, it would seem that would fix the problem. I don't know if that's something reasonable, or if there was some other reason why the issue was closed a few months ago saying we couldn't do it, or if there are some downsides to that I'm not aware of.
I thought we needed to be root to actually do the restic restore.
Well, to
We
do the
need
rest
get
restore, right? But this is the restic restore helper in a container that's added to the pod in the restore. So when you restore a pod that has that we have restic volumes to copy in, we have the restic restore in a container that basically looks for that .velero file just so that it knows that it's done. So it's really just an init container that has one job, which is to look for that one directory to be created.
Yeah, it's essentially just blocking the rest of the pod from starting up until the day has been restored.
And the issue is that if you have a pod that specifies in its security context run as non-root true, the way we're creating that container, it can't be started. Because the Kubernetes code around that checks for UID. And if there's no UID, basically it's not, basically for some reason, and it feels to me like this is a Kubernetes bug, but we were actually looking into this morning and it looks like there was a Kubernetes bug open and it was closed as kind of, this is the way I expect it to work. So if you have a pod that has run as non-root true, any containers you're adding need to have a UID specified apparently. And so that restic container, the init restore helper, is failing to start. And it seems like in that case, although this isn't anything I've tested myself, but just from the comment in the issue put in, that if you were to use the UID for that non-root username that we're using now instead of the name, it would work in that use case. The thing that I don't know 100% is whether there's any downside to doing that. Is there any use case that currently works fine that would break? I don't think there is, but it's not something I've tried. Nothing I've tested.
I mean, all the files are going to wind up belonging to the user, that non-root user.
Right, and I think the intended change here would be to specify the same user, but use the UID instead of the name, because of just to work around that kind of Kubernetes weirdness around this particular security context issue. So it ought to be identical in practice, but because if we know based on the base image we're using what the UID would match to that user, and we use that instead, and also certainly from the point of view of and again, I don't have a lot of background on this particular user that commented on the Velero issue, and also put in the issue on the conveyor side. But on the conveyor side, since we're using consistent images that are different in terms of base images than upstream, our fix would be independent of the upstream fix anyway. So whether we fix it or not is kind of separate from whether upstream fixes it. Although I just wanted to get an idea here as to whether, because the issues are the same. It's just a question of in your Docker file versus that, how that would be handled. And I know, I guess now too, we don't have a separate Docker file for the restic restore helper, because with BuildX we're using the kind of combined kind of shared Docker file for all the builds now, I think.
Yeah, there's just a single Docker file, and I think we just replace like the bin argument during make, and it copies in the appropriate binary, or builds the appropriate binary during the image build.
So, I mean, it's not something that we need to decide now. It's just, I guess, bringing it up because it may be something that warrants some kind of investigation, afterwards, just to figure out. It seems like just using the UID instead of the name should work, but there's always the hidden downsides that you don't think about when you first talk about it. And I just don't know if there's some obscure situation where this actually makes it worse for. And
yeah, I think for the restic restore helper, given that it's like a single process. It's just pulling and checking for the existence of a file. So it's not writing anything. So I don't think it would cause any like change in ownerships or anything that would affect anything. My only concern are the UIDs for the, I would just want to check to make sure that like it's always like a static UID
exactly.
that's used.
That's the part I don't know. I mean, and that's going to depend on, and that's obviously different now with the new base image situation.
Yeah, so we need to investigate.
If there's not a static UID, then obviously that's a problem. If there is one, and the other thing is this something we would want to limit the scope of to just the restic restore helper, just so there's no need to do this change for the Velero and the Velero image, for example. because that's running as its own pod from a deployment or daemon set that we specify. So that workaround is only needed for this REST restore helper because this is an image that's being inserted as an init container in user pods, and that might require a change to the buildx stuff to be able to specify alternate, something that, because we'd only want this to apply to that one container image, not to the various architectures of the Velero image.
Yep, agreed. Okay, well, I think, yeah, maybe we'll.
And as I said,
reopen this and
the issue
investigate.
I linked to is currently closed, but the user that was asking the questions posed the question there, can we just use the UID? So that if it makes sense, probably just take that existing issue and reopen it for the investigation, rather than create something new, I think.
Yeah, we can just reopen it. I remember, Eleanor and Nolan and I went through all of these and we're just closing things. So
yeah,
I can't remember, what the thinking process on this was.
Yeah.
So.
And again, this is one of these things, when you're going through 100 issues, you say, okay, I don't see how this could work. You close it, and then someone else comes back and asks a more detailed question about it, and you go back and think and say, well, maybe that does work. Let's think about it, and which makes sense. I mean, that's kind of the whole process. The whole stale issues, close a bunch, and then if the issue matters, it comes back, and then we look at it in more detail, and then figure out, okay, the original assessment was right. No, we still can't do it, or okay, maybe this is fine. Let's look into it.
Okay, that's fine. So tell you what, I will put the, I'll reopen it. I'll add the needs investigation level label. And let's see. Okay. I don't know if we're gonna get to it anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and if we end up doing more work on this on our side, we'll certainly update the issue here as well. As I said, because this is code on the Docker file side that's not shared with our fork. If we do make a change, it'll be separate anyway. But if we take action on our side, I'll update the issue accordingly, and then we can decide whether it makes sense for the Velero level as well, or whether that doesn't. And as I said, I don't even know if the user that put the issue in for us and was commenting upstream, whether he's using our stuff with, ADP or conveyor, or whether he's using upstream, and kind of where he fits into this.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So Eleanor's not here, but she had a question of whether it was okay for her to start redoing the labels and stuff, which seems fine to me. Anybody else have an issue with that? So we say, so when she shows up, we can tell her, okay, and we'll move on to to Raphael.
Sounds good. All right, Raphael, you want to share your screen or something?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Jonas, I promise I'm not gonna hijack the whole meeting on this one.
It's fine. We don't have any other discussion topics, so go for it.
Right, I did some changes based on the last feedback. I'm gonna try to keep a little bit high level. So, and apologies, I just merged requests this morning. I didn't give anyone time to review it offline. So that's why I'm gonna go in an online review very quickly here. So just a refresh, those are hooks to do pre and post backup and restore. One thing that drove the conversation last time is the use case of one Velero backup being finished, triggering a Velero restore, not necessarily on the same cluster. So what was the changes from the design since last? So the pre-backup action, I didn't change much on this one. The high level is run the plugin after the backup object itself is validated. So we just make sure the backup is validated. It doesn't have any clash with existing names. Then we run the pre-backup actions. Now, after that, I did some proposal changes. So the post backup action, what we spoke, like we really want the backup be persisted on the object storage. So that's pretty much what I changed here. After the backup is completely persisted on the object storage, there is something such a thing called backup final status. We patch the backup with the final status. What I'm proposing is once the backup is completed, is on the object storage, then we kick in the post backup plugin. Gonna have a status called executing post backup actions. We execute all this, we collect the logs, then we patch the object storage with those logs. So that's gonna be a second pass on the object storage, just with the logs of the post backup. Then
So when you say second pass, what are you thinking there?
what I'm thinking here today, the backup is persisted on the object storage in a method called put backup.
Yeah, I'm actually breaking that apart right now as part of upload progress.
Okay, so I can wait for you to break that down. I thought to create like a patch backup after the put is there. I go and just patch with one single file, which is the post backup log.
Yes, I think the idea of having multiple backup logs is reasonable, and that'll let us do a couple things. Because I also have that same problem with like upload progress, because if the server restarts, the log files, I don't think we can really append to them because they're actually written as gzip files. So we should have this concept of multiple log files, and then we'll need to modify Velero, the backup logs function, to actually get the multiple log files and cap them together.
I can do it the way. I thought like a quick win, not change the existing function, put backup, and then create a method just you can individually just save one file.
Yeah, but you see, I don't think you can update the backup file. The log file, sorry.
But I can update the object storage, right?
Well, the log file, see, the other problem is the log files are actually written natively as gzipped files. So once they're closed, I don't believe you can append to them.
Okay.
And plus they're also in temporary storage. So we're going to eventually be doing so the upload progress monitoring should keep going even if we restart the server. And if we restart the server, I think the log files, like if the container gets restarted, the log files are living in temp space. So I think they'll get wiped anyway. So I would say there's good reasons to have multiple log files where we can have this post stuff happening and cap them all together.
Okay. So, well, the post backup actions, they can always leave the logs on the controller, right? On the backup controller, not necessarily being persisted on object storage.
Well, it'd be good because I think we want to have the logs of the upload progress monitoring, because if it's getting errors or something at the end after the main backup is completed, it would be good to actually log those into the backup. So we may as well have a mechanism for doing it for that, and we can do it for this as well.
Okay. So how you want to handshake this? You want to piggyback, or
if everybody's good with having multiple log files, I can just go ahead and put something into the upload progress monitoring to do that, and I'll get some patches in pretty soon for the remainder of it.
Okay.
And then I can show you what I've got currently.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna change the design doc to kind of like refer your in progress uploading. and then wait for them. But yeah, okay, right. Very quick on the pre-restore action as well. I changed it based on the conversation last time. The pre-restore action will happen. The way that I'm suggesting here is to execute when the restore object is created, is validated for semantics, but the backup, it's not yet fetched. And during the pre-restore action, we run a sync on the storage location to make sure we refresh to whatever the backup that's coming will be there, right? Because remember, we were talking, if you restore too fast and the other backup is not yet seen, because you're running different clusters, you want to sync the disk. Now, the thing is, the pre-restore action will execute before fetching the object, the backup object. So of course, you can kind of do is my backup ready? You do not know at that time, but you can write some protection code on the pre-restore action to, you can fetch the backup before the actual restore. You can do some other stuff if you want. So that's a change from the other. And finally, the post restore action, very similar what we discussed on the post backup action. We want to have the restore completely persisted, the logs on the object storage. Then once the restore object got the completion timestamp, then we start to execute the post restore action. Then we have to find out how we're going to save those logs, because the logs for restore, they're different from the logs from the backup, right? You don't have the same phases of uploading and so on. Restore, it's a simpler way for the good or bad in terms of backup. But the point being is, once the restore got a completion timestamp, there's no more restore to be done. Then we start to execute the post restore action. Then we can save those logs somewhere or on the controller or something. But that's when you run it, and then whatever the return status gonna be patched on the restore status object. Those are the main changes of the design from last time, and you're gonna have phases, right, for each execution of those plugins. I'll leave everyone to sink in to see if we have during the week. You can take a look and see if we have any changes, but I already have something to do it based on the conversation, Dave. I probably zone out. Everybody zone out of my explanation at this point. I can feel it. It's all right. All right. That's all I have. I'll pick up from this point next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Rafael. Anyone have any questions for Rafael? All right, then you can stop sharing if you want. And let's dive into some contributor shoutouts. Or actually, before I do that, does anyone have anything else that they would like to bring up today as a discussion topic? Right, and let's dive into contributor shoutouts. Open these up. Bridget, do you want to partner with me?
Yes, I can do that. I did notice, I think some of these are maybe duplicates from the week from last week.
Ah, yes, true. I see that
Yes.
now.
But I think the first one is a new one. That's from Dan Fung, who just added some changes to our ET test to make sure that we're properly waiting for snapshots whenever we are running on AWS. So thank you very much, Dan Fung. It helps just make the E2E test more reliable. So thank you. Yeah, then I think
duplicate, and duplicate. All right. That was easy. Thank you for that. All right.
Not a problem. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of the week. See you all next week. Have a good one.
Bye.